that, I would like to introduce you to our speaker, Mr. David Ebersole. David. David,
It looks like he just lost his connection. Let's give him a second to connect back in. You can go ahead when you're ready now.
Okay, great. Well, thanks everybody for taking the time today. I wanted to talk a little bit about this new program that we put together to put some money out on the streets to help with the challenges that a lot of our business community is putting out by the coronavirus and all the associated issues that we're having with that. My name is David Eversole. I'm the Economic Development Director for the City of Cleveland. And once again, thanks for taking the time today. Go next slide. So the goal of the fund is to try to find a way to help businesses get through this economic impact, and to do so in a way that fits alongside of and with the work that's being done by the federal, the state, and the local governments at every level. And so our focus is really on this emergency working capital fund, is trying to find a way to get a little bit of money out to businesses to help with some of the costs outside of payroll. We can do payroll, we will do payroll, but we know that a lot of the federal funds are focused on payroll. And so we wanted to try to work on some of the other costs that you're still having to pay if you're in business during the period while your business is closed or operating at reduced capacity. We came up with this fund, and I'll go into it here in a minute. We'll go to the next slide. So our fund is up to $10,000 loans for reimbursement of operating costs incurred starting as of March 1st and going onward through as long as this lasts. There's no fees attached to the loan. There's no payments, interest or principal until January 1, 2021. And then we have a 1% interest rate thereafter. The payments are $150 a month until the loan is repaid. So should get paid back in about 6 years. So it's a fairly low cost. It's $150 a month, which, and not to say it's nothing, but it's designed to be fairly low cost and be able to stretch out over the time as people get back to their normal operating without being too much of a burden. So that's how we came up with that. The next slide. Our eligibility, pretty straightforward. Business was operating within the city of Cleveland as of March 1. We have eligibility, eligible small business with SBA definitions. Big definition on that is if you're less than 500 employees, you're eligible. That you were negatively impacted by the COVID-19 virus, and there's some information on that. And we do a credit review. We do a credit check. We don't, it's not a pass-fail kind of thing, but it's the terms I use is eyes open. So we want to make sure that we understand who our borrowers are. We understand that being a business owner means taking risk, and sometimes that results in effects that have negative impacts on people's credit. So what we're looking for is seeing if there's any issues out there, and then we talk it through. And if you're a good payer, if you're making good faith efforts to be a good payer for your debt, then that's the kind of business owner that we want to be engaged with ultimately. So we do have limited amounts of funds that are available under this program, though we do have a couple other programs that we have been operating for a while now that and provide working capital under certain circumstances, not quite as favorable, but to the extent that someone is looking for something, whether it's to be larger, that the need is larger than $10,000, or it's not a great fit for this program, but there's other resources that we have that we could be available. So I would encourage everyone to get applications in as quickly as possible. We opened up on Monday with these applications, and we're already, getting up close towards 30, 40, 50 applications. So they're coming in quickly. Please get the information in as fast as you can to us, and we can try and figure out the best way to distribute these funds and to help our businesses. So next slide's fine. Link application right there on the link. Applications that are completed, send them to economicdevelopment@clevelandohio.gov. And that's pretty much it. It's a pretty straightforward, simple program. I think Rick had sent me some questions, which I'll pull up here so that I can kind of answer some of them for you. And then we can dive in any other questions that y'all might have. So a couple questions. Pretty much every amount of funding that we do requires the support of the council person that's in the ward that you're in. If you are not sure what ward you're in, you can find it on the city website or the city council website, or just contact us and we'll help you out as well. All the contact information is there. The council's aware of the program. They're aware of that there's asks for letters, and many of them use some sort of standardized form. The other comment I'll have on that is we will accept applications without the council support letter. As you go through the application, you'll note that is a closing requirement. It's not an application requirement. So get the information in. We can start processing it. We know the council people have a lot of things on their mind. Some people jump on this stuff right away. Some people take a little bit of time. So, we don't want to hold up people's applications as long as everybody knows that in order to actually move forward with the loan, we need to get that together. So, if you're working on an application, get the application done, reach out to your council person, let them know, but then get the application to us and we'll handle all that coordination. Funds are to be used for operating expenses. We talked about the rent, utilities, payroll. We can cover that kind of stuff. We can cover some inventory costs. We can cover a mortgage payment if you got one. We're not paying for construction. We're not paying for large pieces of equipment with this loan fund. It's really focused on this working capital need, these costs that people are paying while business is ongoing in this environment. The other thing I'll talk about costs is to the extent that you've got one bill that, it's if you have a loan from us for $10,000, you have a say 2 months rent and it's $12,000, send it to us, get it to us, call it a day, and we'll be done with it. It's easier for us to turn around something that's one check, 2 checks, one invoice, 2 invoices, and then we're off and running. If you're looking to get money from us and you send us a bunch of $100 invoices that we've got to go through, then it takes more time. So if you're thinking about what operating costs to put together, try to think about it from that perspective as well. Documentation on the funding. We're going back to March 1. Right now we're accepting applications, then we're going to have to get a contract together and kind of stuff. Our goal is to try to get these checks out at some point in May. It's a little bit ambitious for us, but it's doable if we can get this together. So in an ideal world, you're hitting us with your March and April rent checks, your March and April utility bills, a couple things like that, and we're done. You get us the invoices, you get us the checks, the canceled checks, the proof of payment for that, and we're done from a from a use of funds perspective.
David, as you answer these
Yep.
questions, would you read the question to us so that we know what you're answering?
Sure. What is the date range window for applications? We'll continue to accept applications until we stop, which doesn't really, isn't really an answer, but I've got, 40 to 50 applications in. I would really suggest trying to get applications in by Friday, if at all possible. We're trying to be, we'll be processing applications in the order that they're received, but we're not serving on a first come first served basis. So we'll be contemplating, we'll be doing an analysis of the need, analysis of the businesses, trying to make sure that we're applying our funds in an equitable way. But there'll be a point where if I've got 200, 300 applications, that we'll get through those before we, and we'll have our funds put out. That said, I would never say don't get an application in, because we will be looking to bring in partners or to identify other funding sources. If people don't send us applications, we don't know what the demand is, so that makes it harder for us to justify what we're looking for and what we're trying to do. And it also, if you come in and you've got a $25,000 need, and I can't necessarily put you into this fund, like I mentioned earlier, I might be able to put you into another funding source. So there's things we can do on that. A question about an explanation of the time needed to restore the business. Basically, what we're trying to do with the fund is to bridge the gap, or at least help to bridge the gap of challenges that people are facing during this in this current environment. And so one of the things we're doing in trying to figure out how to deploy this capital is we're saying, are we looking at someone who is thinking about how they're getting through today and thinking about how they ramp back up again in the future? And so ultimately, the question goes on to say, quote, is the city looking for an educated guess by owners as to the time frame in which they would be back to their prior levels? Along those lines. I mean, give us, you're not going to be held to, did you do everything that you said you were going to do? But we want to know that you've thought about what your plan is, that you have a plan, so that normal business can resume as the health crisis allows. Question about the declaration of health insurance coverage. I think the declaration, you have to complete it if you do or you don't. I think we can still work around eligibility issues, but we do collect that information. So it's not a eligibility determination. So those are the questions that I had beforehand. I hope I did a reasonable job answering those. And if I didn't, just ask. So that's all I have right now. So maybe we'll take a few questions.
Yeah, so if there's any questions from the group, if you could go ahead and just type those into the chat box, then we can go ahead and address these with David right away. David, are nonprofits eligible to apply?
Yes, we can fund nonprofits. The business test is a little bit more challenging from a business perspective, in that for the business case, if you're an operating business, you can point to your historic records, you can point to your your employment needs. It's a pretty easy way for us to gauge were you a strong business how this impacted you and how you'll resume back. So nonprofits, that's not quite as straightforward, but we will certainly take a look at it. And again, there's some funding sources for nonprofits that are not necessarily available to for-profits. So we can also help get people into the right box.
Okay. And then there's a question here. Is there a personal guarantee required?
Yes. Personal guarantee is actually it's the only security on these loans. So there's not a security, there's not collateral, there's not a mortgage, there's not a UCC or equipment filing. The only item that we're asking for is a personal guarantee.
Okay, so you just answered the next question about collateral being required. So I think we're good. Any other questions for David? Okay. Well, it says, where can we find information for other programs that are available?
All the information is on our website, rethinkcleveland.org. So we talk about our vacant property initiative program for expansion into vacant properties. You can look at our EDA program. That's a real good program. A similar program we can do working capital from. We can also do equipment from that and construction as well. That's a pretty low cost loan. I think the rate on that EDA defines the rate. So our rate is at 3/4 of prime, which was a little bit less than 4% a couple weeks ago. And I actually haven't looked and seen what happened to prime over the last few weeks. So I can't tell you exactly what we're at, but it's going to be in that 3 to 4% range.
Okay. There's a question here. It says, are landlords, in parentheses, real estate LLCs, to apply, or only the tenants, in parentheses, our company?
Yeah, we're really looking at operating businesses. So if you're a real estate, if you're a real estate LLC that is the holder of the property for an operating business, and we can talk through that. I know there's some corporate structure issues, but if you're just a holder of land and don't really have employment or something like that, then that's not a good fit for the program. But we're open to, I'm always open to a conversation. So if, I don't want to throw something out without getting into the particular circumstances. So if there's questions, you can always reach out to me, whether by phone or by email.
Great. And then there's a question, how long will it take to disperse funds when approved?
Sure. Well, so the caveat to that is how clean is the disbursement package? What are the costs that look like? So, the way that all of our loans work is we get loan approval, we get the contract, and then for disbursement we require invoices, and we require proof of payment. We can disperse on invoices and collect proof of payment at some later point. So we try to get the money out pretty quickly. It's hard to say because City Hall, of course, all our operations are also impacted by the virus. We're doing a lot more remote work. And so there's some things that you could get done quickly because you could have somebody get up and walk something down and walk around. You can't do anymore. And so there's some challenges there. But if we can get we're getting applications in, we're going to start trying to make decisions quickly. We've got our agreements pretty well stamped out what those are going to look like. So we're hoping we can turn that pretty quick. And if we get a quick and easy disbursement package, like I talked about, if you've got a rent payment or utility bills, or something where you can not, put it down, give us a couple invoices and a check, that's clean, that's easy. We can get that into our system and we can fire it right out the door. So That's a my goal, as I thought I said earlier, my goal is to try to get people money in May. I think that's doable, but it is it's going to be tight, and there's always the possibility that something gets held up, but that's the plan.
And can funds be used for payment of payroll taxes?
I hadn't actually thought about that. In general, we don't we don't look to pay taxes with our money, especially for paying taxes to ourselves. But I wouldn't necessarily rule it out. So I'll have to think about that. I'll have to talk, there's a legal question in there too that I would want to check on. So
Sure.
I'll put that aside. I'll get back to you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for David? No? Okay, well, it is just about 4:30. So with that, I just want to thank everyone for joining us on the call today. And thank you to Director Ebersole for sharing such valuable information and insight during these trying times. We encourage all of you to share with us your thoughts on topics that you'd like to see covered in future calls like this, and we will do our best to address them for you. Please stay tuned to your email as we announce our next call. And if there are other manufacturers in your network that you think would benefit from this information, please feel free to share this with them or let us know, and we'd be happy to reach out to help. As I mentioned earlier, an archived version of this call will be available on our YouTube channel, as well as in the COVID-19 resources section on our website. You will also find a copy, a link to the application that is up on the screen here as well. Thanks again, stay safe, and we look forward to speaking with everyone soon. Thank you.